This project is not my project. This project is Africa's project. I was speaking to Gedeon the other day. I said, we are the founders or the fathers of the new Africa. And that's how I perceive myself. I perceive myself and Gedeon and, Saliou there. We are all fathers of the new Africa. So do you want to be a partner of the new Africa, or do you want to be stuck with the status quo of dependency on the West? So it's a question that we need to ask each other. Is this or this? It's a moving train. Whether we like it or not, we're going to achieve the goal. Whether today, tomorrow, or next. So be a partner. Join us. Reach out. I mean, you can reach out to me personally, president@africandev.org, or you can reach out to the Secretary General. If you have any conversation you want to have, let's talk about it.
One of the most consequential problems we have currently in Africa is access to jobs. We relatively have the youngest population in the world, and we have massive youth unemployment. When we look at our industrial output, it's relatively low compared to other parts of the world. We import a lot of stuff. We don't produce many of our goods, and that trade imbalance doesn't favor Africa. But at the same time, the private sector, of course, during the previous years, we've seen, great African industrialists showing the way, like Aliko Dangote, really showing the real way we should follow as Africa. And putting a summary on that, it means that those are the type of vision that need to be followed so that Africa could fully industrialize on its resources, transform them, and making sure that the jobs are being created and development is being led by the private sector.
My final words are really encouraging everybody to come and, be part of this process or movement, because the trend is already on the track when we're heading towards the objective. And if you are out there looking at us or watching us and you are very concerned about the development of Africa, this is the right moment and this is the opportunity for you to join in and be part of this movement. Don't wait for others to do the work and then come try to, get something out of it. Be the person that will be the foundation of that development. You see, there is a saying that says, no matter how big, beautiful is a house, people barely talk about the foundation. They talk about the ceiling, the cement, and all, but they're forgetting one important piece: the foundation where the building is being seated. And we want this African coalition to be that foundation that can lead the diaspora and all African leaders.
Africa to the world. This is Pan-African Half Hour, where African voices lead the conversation. Ideas inspire action, and a united continent shapes the future. One Africa, one vision, one future.
All right, guys, welcome to the special edition of the Pan-African Half Hour show. But today is more than just the announcement of the African Development Summit. It's the beginning of a conversation about the Africa we want to build. And the question is, who must be on the table? That's the question we're going to have. Joining me today, I have my co-host, Gedeon Baleke, and I also have MD Saliou. He's going to join us shortly. So, but let's continue having this conversation. I have a great man here. He's the General Secretary of the African Coalition for Development. He's like the main host for this show today. So I'm just starting off for him for the first time. I said, okay, Mr. Host of the show, can you let me lead the show? Can you let me lead the conversation? How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing fine. I'm really excited about the African Development Summit. Really excited to be in New York and, keep on with the conversation we've started a couple of years ago. And it's not just a conversation. It's not just a narrative we're trying to push forward. This is a whole new type of mindset and doing practice that we are pushing so that we can at least have a new generation of African leaders able to address some of the most pressing challenges that our continent is facing currently. There's tremendous problems we have in Africa to tackle. And I strongly believe that with our human-centered approach and with the type of conversations and engagement and platforms, partnerships, And way of doing that is being promoted at the African Coalition for Development. We can indeed be able to achieve greatness in the continent. And that's why I'm more excited about the Africa Development Summit. And this year is going to be really special. Now we have a lineup of great panelists, interesting people, and it's usually nice to also be in New York City doing the UNGA meeting.
Calling all Africans at home and abroad. It is time to arise. We have waited long enough for others to define our future. The truth is simple. Only Africa can save Africa. Our continent is rich in talent and opportunity. Development takes unity, leadership, and action. That is why the African Coalition for Development exists. We are building a movement to empower communities and support entrepreneurship across the continent. We need your voice. Whether you are in Africa or anywhere in the world, your contribution creates real change. Donate, partner, volunteer. Visit africandev.org and join the movement. Africa must lead. African Coalition for Development. Because only Africa can save Africa. Join us.
See you.
Yeah, I'm meeting a lot of policymakers and leaders from across the globe and discuss about the challenges we face under these critical times. The world is at a deep conjuncture and Africa plays a monumental role in everything that is being shaped currently. And we don't just need to sit at the table. We definitely need to be leaders in addressing some of those challenges.
You're right. Thank you so much for sharing that. The truth is, we need to be at that table. Remind me of this book that I mean, you can always grab.
Yeah,
yeah. So, and the book, why we need to shape the African vision, why we need to shape the goal of Africa. Nobody can do it for us. We have to do it as Africans ourselves. All right. So, and the interesting thing about this African Development Summit for 2026, that is the fact that it's being created as a serious meeting, not just a serious meeting. It's a point for people who believe in Africa development. So if you want to connect with leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, even policymakers, this is where to be. And also is another meeting point to connect the African diaspora. And the question around that is, what can we build together that will move Africa forward? Just that word. What can we build together that will move Africa forward? Because when people hear the word African Development Summit, what comes to their mind is like, maybe just another summit. No, but it is not. I just want to make it very clear from the beginning that this is not a summit. And that's the reason, if you remember, in 2023, I believe, this is why this was built. We are not just making speech for the sake of speeches. We are interested in relationships. That means ideas, opportunities, and commitments that will continue after the event is over. And that's one of the problems we have most times at the UNGA. Sometimes some conversations are not carried over. After the UNGA, the Jamboree, everybody just go home and forget about what happened. And that is not what we want to do. We want to continue the conversation and start the implementation.
Yeah.
Because when we look across Africa, one thing is we see extraordinary people. I mean, doing extraordinary things, and they are doing it in isolation. I mean, we see entrepreneurs with solutions, but they have limited access to capital. We even see investors looking for credible opportunity, but lacking trusted connections. And here again, we see diasporas. I mean, diaspora professionals, like smart diasporans who want to contribute, but do not always know where to begin. And we also see institutions that could achieve much more if they were better connected. So, and that's why this summit is designed to help close those gaps. We want to create a bridge between ideas and resources. I mean, between the continent and the diaspora, between leaders and established institutions, and also between conversation and implementation. And that is what we want to do. And if I'm going to let Gedeon continue. So what would you say is the greatest development opportunity Africa has over the decades?
Well, yeah, as you said, like when we look at our model at the ACD, only Africa can save Africa. And that summarizes everything. The goal here with the African Development Summit is to close the gap of what has been malfunctioning, to close the gap of what can be seen as a malpractice, to be able to really analyze critically and rationally what has worked, what has not worked, and how can we be able to fill that gap and make sure that we are turning over the things and make sure that we're implementing these sort of practices. Secondly, as I said, we are at a global conjunction. The world is rapidly changing. And for centuries, this is not the first time we're experiencing this. From the industrial revolutions, from the colonial era, when we see the history of our continent, we've always been the provider of natural resources. When it comes to automobile industry, it was African being at the core. When it was when we had before even slave trade during the pre-colonial era, when they were looking for receipts, they had to go to Africa to look for them, raw materials and stuff. And today we're experiencing the same thing with vast mineral resources that are key components to the rapid technological transformation we are currently living. And knowing all that, we cannot afford to behave the same way we've behaving for centuries. We need to flip the things around. But how do we do it? We need to change the conversation. And that's why we bring this conversation what it's supposed to be, and making sure that we have all these great minds, confronting them with the real fundamental shift that needs to happen on the continent, and how we can now take charge of our own destiny. Only Africa can save Africa. But we need partnerships.
Yes.
But in today's world, those partnerships should be based on something critical, something more revolutionary, based on Africa, and something that will make sure that Africa is no longer a territory of scramble. It's a territory of production. It's a territory of value addition. It's a territory that can claim a place at the global economic stage, because everything starts beneath the African soil. Everything starts with the African raw materials and everything they could provide. And how do we make sure that we close those gaps in everything that has been malfunctioning or not worked? We need to make sure that we are able to address what has not worked and confront those truths as Africans first, so that we can be able to address the imbalance that have been established internationally when it comes to dealing with other partners. The awakening is there, but we need to shift the narrative.
We need to shift the narrative.
Yeah.
So, but before we even forget, so make sure you grab this book. Just go to africandev.org and just click on it, and you can always grab, or you can just read chapter 1 of it. And that should be enough to inspire you. It's called The Great Awakening, Reclaiming the Continent's Destiny. It's very, very important. So, I wrote this book, I had it for more than 2 years before I was able to, publish it. It's a very powerful book that you need to read. It's called The Great Awakening, So grab that book, and
that's a beautiful book, because I had an opportunity to read it. I had an opportunity to go through it. It's a book that addresses those fundamental questions we have as Africa, and how we can flip the game so that we can be able to reclaim our destiny and play our important role. That's why I suggest most people to go and grab it and read it. It's a beautiful book, a really insightful one, and I hope the readers will enjoy it.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for the forward. I have the privilege of having him, putting the forward. So now, another thing I also want us to understand, especially the listeners, people in diaspora, people who are going to join us in New York on the 18th of September, that they need to understand something, that the diaspora, because we often make that mistake. We need the diaspora to just be sending money to Africa. No. Their job should not only be how to send money. We have brothers, we have sisters, so send me money. I believe the diaspora itself should be invited to help build, to help invest, mentor, connect, and lead the diaspora. The African dream. Because the truth is, what we don't understand is there are a lot of knowledge that the diasporans have been able to accumulate within the years. And with this knowledge, it's more than $1 or $2 they're going to give somebody. This is great. The same thing happened to Singapore. When they went outside, they get all the knowledge, they bring back the knowledge to help build Singapore. And same thing is happening to China. The Chinese in America right now, they get the knowledge, they go back to China, and they use it. That's why all the factories, all the warehouse, they are right now in China. So we should.
Africa's future will be shaped by the leaders, innovators, and communities creating solutions today. The African Coalition for Development brings people and institutions together to advance leadership, empower young people, strengthen communities, and support African-led solutions to Africa's most important challenge. But lasting progress requires committed partners. Your donation helps us expand our programs, develop emerging leaders, and create opportunities that can transform generations. Join us in building a stronger Africa. Donate today at africandev.org.
We should not just be sending money. We should also be a participant. That's why the African Coalition for Development should be your partner. So if you are watching this now and you want to partner with African Coalition for Development, just reach out to us. info@africandev.org. I mean, African, like the African, then dev.org. You can always reach out to us and partner. You can chip in $20, $100, or you can sponsor a project, or you can adopt a project. Gedeon, we've been seeing a lot of organizations reaching out to us with a lot of projecting. There are a lot of projects that we need to achieve, and that's the development of Africa. And also, you can also become a volunteer. You can also be an engaging partner. You can be a partner with us in different ways. If you are a CEO of a major corporation, because we know that most Africans in diaspora, they are leading companies. They are building businesses, working in technology, finance, healthcare, government, academia, and many other sectors. So if you reach out to us and say, okay, I work in healthcare, how can I be of help? Then we can sit down and say, okay, we have an outreach. Can you help us? We need doctors on ground. We need this on ground. Or if you work in academia, we can tell you, we need a curriculum. We're working on this particular. Can you help us? If you work in finance, we can tell you, can you help us? Same with technology. We want to build an ICT center in Congo and Nigeria. We need somebody with that knowledge of infrastructure that can sit and guide us on how this can work, or can even donate and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to supply you guys with all the laptops you need. And that's what we want to do. And that's the purpose of this summit. We don't want to have this summit and just talk and forget about it. And that's why we're on this podcast. The host of the show is Gideon Baleke. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this live, I want you to take that bold step. This project is not my project. This project is Africa's project. I was speaking to Gideon the other day. I said, we are the founders or the fathers of the new Africa. And that's how I perceive myself. So do you want to be a partner of the new Africa, or do you want to be stuck with the status quo of dependency on the West? So it's a question that we need to ask each other. Is this or this? It's a moving train. Whether we like it or not, we're going to achieve the goal. Whether today, tomorrow, or next. So be a partner. Join us. Reach out. You can reach out to me personally, president@africandev.org, or you can reach out to the Secretary General if you have any conversation you want to have. Let's talk about it. So let's continue the conversation about the summit. So for this year's summit, what should people expect from the 2026 summit? Who are we looking at? Who's going to be coming? Who's going to set the conversation straight? Who are we looking out for?
Well, this year's summit is really interesting. We're having the lineup of great speakers, especially great minds in Africa that are doing great things, as well as in the diaspora, as you said, with a fundamental summary. As you said it well. Today we're looking at two things, and those two things summarize actually the outcome of what we are looking at. The diaspora plays a critical role, and if we can summarize those roles into two aspects, the first one is the ecosystem. The second one is to change the practice, build ecosystems, change the practice. And that's at the core of the African Coalition for Development. Because more than an organization, we're a platform of coalitions, a skeleton of other organizations, like a connection railway between grassroots organizations and the diaspora with their ambitions and their goals toward Africa. So how do we make this work? We needed a system. Now we have a system, the ACD. The only thing that needs to happen there is just to change the practice. How do we change the practice? Is to change how we view the problems at the bottom of the society of what we have to address, and make sure that the visions of the diaspora is touching and is being implemented at the grassroots. And that's will be the fundamental basis of the conversation that we're going to have at this year's summit. Really interesting. On our line of panel, we have people who've done real work at the grassroots and at the international level. And when you combine that, you have this powerhouse of people who are not just, because we are used to have narrators. These people are just not, they are not narrators. These people are leaders, doers, builders, implementers, and who have real life experience and who have done a lot and who are doing a lot in the African continent. So having a great panels with ministers, government officials, CEO of companies, young leaders, activists, grassroots organization leaders. So when we have a combination of all this, you can only understand that the goal we're looking at here is pragmatism. We don't just want to have another conversation, but we need to have a conversation focused on the projection of what we already have and what we have to achieve. We've built this structure. We need to make this structure work. We need to make sure that the structure serves its purpose, and the purpose is connect the diaspora to grassroots projects in Africa and make sure that the continent is being developed. And we are really proud to be part of that and to be part of those conversations. I myself am already excited to listen to doers, leaders, and executives that have done a lot and that will continue to inspire us to do.
All right. Thank you so much. I mean, one of the interesting thing about the main event, and when I mean the main event that we're going to be having tomorrow, the main event we're going to be having on the 18th, sorry, is the people that are going to be joining in. I mean, not just only the people, just like you said already, is what they actually have to offer. I mean, we have business people that are going to be speaking. We have the presidential candidates of Nigeria. One of the presidential candidates is going to be one of the speaker. We have and he's a young person too. All right. Then we have the minister of youth in South Sudan, Paul Kabir. Then we have an ambassador, the senior ambassador in South Sudan too, Akodok. We have the great man here, Gedeon Baleke, he's doing so much in Congo, when it comes to Congolese youth leaders or young leaders. I mean, just he leads them in park. I believe he's the next president of Congo. I mean, when it comes to the future of Congo is in his hands. And we have Mamadou Saliou Diallo too. He's the president of the Guinea Association in New York. I mean, he's doing great. Also, we have quite a number of people. I can't even mention all their names in here. I mean, we have Diop from Senegal. I mean, we have can't even mention it because I mean there's so much of great young leaders that are joining this conversation. I mean, we have I can't even if I didn't mention your name, just pardon me because I'm there's so much on my head today. But I mean, if you go to the africandev.org, I mean, you're going to see the names of all the speakers in there, so, I mean, these are like great people that are going to, grace this occasion and they're going to speak and they're going to not just only speak, they are going to, lighten the conversation. We have Mercy also. Mercy Otieno is a Kenyan. She's a Kenyan. She's doing great when it comes to foundation. She's a doctor. And we have quite a number of them. We have Esther, she's actually.
Join us in New York on September 18th, 2026 for the African Development Summit, a UNGA side event presented by the African Coalition for Development. Connect with leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, policymakers, and changemakers shaping Africa's future. Through leadership, enterprise, technology, development, and action. Be part of the conversation. Be part of Africa's next chapter. Register today at africandev.org/adsummit 2026.
Doing great also when it comes to the field of business. She's the top CEO on our own. And we have quite a number of people, and I don't want to bore you with all that, but let's quickly touch base with the conversations that are going to be spoken about. So now the first session is going to focus on the Africa we want. That is youth leadership, diplomacy, and African institution. What do you think about this particular conversation? What do you hope for us to expect in that particular session, which is the Africa we want, youth leadership, diplomacy, and African institutions.
Yeah, that's a great topic. We have a great panel on that. The world is changing, and we normally hear people saying we need to reform the biggest multilateral body in the world, the UN. We need to change the Security Council, the way it operates. We need to reform African institutions, perhaps, to be able to tackle and address conflicts that are, ramping up across Africa. So those are the core conversations, making sure that there's this African perception or perspective that is being put out there diplomatically at the international level, as well as the aspiration of Africa to be not just sub-participant, but real actors when it comes to resolving their own issues at the diplomatic front, but as well being the policymakers of what really affect them and what regards their vision of the world.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So let's also touch base with the second session. So what do you think we need to expect in the second session? It talks about building Africa's next economy. So we're going to look at the enterprise, we're going to look at capital, we're going to look at technology and jobs.
One of the most consequential problems we have currently in Africa is access to jobs. We relatively have the youngest population in the world, and we have massive youth unemployment. When we look at our industrial output, it's relatively low compared to other parts of the world. We import a lot of stuff. We don't produce many of our goods, and that trade imbalance doesn't favor Africa. But at the same time, the private sector, of course, during the previous years, we've seen, great African industrialists showing the way, like Aliko Dangote, really showing the real way we should follow as Africa. And putting a summary on that, it means that those are the type of vision that need to be followed so that Africa could fully industrialize on its resources, transform them, and making sure that the jobs are being created and development is being led by the private sector. Because at the end of the day, what's really creates sustainable progress is the markets, and the markets can only be created with a competitive private sector. The public sector can only play its regulatory role. And, that session will definitely focus on the private sector, which operates in all different sectors, from technology to trades to manufacturing to small and medium businesses and so on and so forth.
All right. So let's look at from the one session 3, which focuses on SDG to real lives, because we talk about SDGs a lot, but most times those does not transform to real initiative or, on ground initiative, So let's look at the virtual conversation, which is the third session is going to focus on from SDG to real lives as community development, health, food, climate, and sustainable Africa. So what do you think that conversation will focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been at the core of advancing sustainable development goals. We've taken this debate to the UN. We've been major advocates. We're in 2026. It's the Agenda 2030. Still have 4 years to go. But, of course, some progress have been made, but there's still a lot to be done. And I don't think we'll be able to beat the promises. But yeah, we definitely need to transform to lead the conversation in that aspect. Really important. Sustainability is really important. Perhaps if Africa decides and the way Africa is developing, we need to make sure that it's developing in a sustainable way. And not the way development happened in other parts of the world, where we saw development becoming a threat to the ecosystems, to climates, and to human beings as well. It's created inequality. So development has to be sustainable, and the manifestation of SDGs in the lives of people is really important. And that's why we are leading this conversation. Though, we still have a huge gap, but we strongly believe in the SDGs and in sustainability as a form of development on which African countries can, project themselves towards their economic progress.
That does it for us when it comes to the virtual. So, but next year, we're going to have all those 3 sections in person, but this year we have them in virtual, we had a lot of visa restrictions, right now. So hopefully next year, everything's going to ease out so we can have those 3 conversation in person so that we can have those voices in person. But this year, the one that we have in person, the only one we have in person, which is going to be session 4, it's called Only Africa Can Save Africa. So we're going to look at leadership, capital, institutions, and action, because that's going to be an high-level in-person session, which is going to focus on the central questions or question behind African Coalition for Development's work. What must Africa build, or what must Africans build? When it comes to finance, when it comes to reform and lead, what lead should we follow, even as Africans, to be able to change the narrative? Not just only change the narrative, but how can we rise to the top after so much dependence? Because we have had so much dependence on foreign influence from the West to the South. I mean, the North have been able to, find their way out a little bit, but they still depend one way or the other on, But I mean, this is majorly on the South, the West, and the East, even the Central Africa. So we're going to discuss about this, and we just don't want to just discuss only. We want to see it as a session that brings in leadership, capital, institutions, enterprise, diplomacy, and also implementation into one room with just one explicit focus, which is action. We don't just want to talk. We just want to see action. So I want you to just, elaborate on, what I've already spoken already. I mean, I've already said it as well, but I want you to elaborate it. And also, I want to bring in, I think I brought in Mamadou Saliou Diallo. He's going to be speaking after Gedeon. I'm going to be introducing him. So he can just add what to expect on the day of the summit. So, but before then, let's Gideon just go and just speak on the in-person session, what we are, we hope to expect.
Yeah. So as you said it all, I think you've been able to put it together. But yeah, so that's our flagship session, because we address all the core issues that are the core of what we have to achieve, not just as ACD, but as Africa and as African descent, as people from the diaspora, and as well as African leaders. But more importantly, as you said, is to make sure that we are not just having a discussion, another resolution, but we definitely need to have a way forward. We need to have commitment toward something and toward what we have to achieve. The development is a trajectory that requires commitment. Discussions are the core principles, but we need to make sure that whenever we leave the place, we don't just leave the place. We leave the place with a commitment that we keep on and make sure that whenever we meet next year, we have tangible progress toward those commitments. And I feel like that's why it's important when we bring all these people in person, all these leaders, to make sure that, okay, we align on this and we can be able to really follow up on the commitment and make sure that whenever we meet next, or whenever we decide to bring on another resolution, we've already made progress toward those commitments.
All right. Thank you so much for adding that. So let me just quickly introduce our co-host also for the UNGA 81 side event, the African Development Summit 2026. I'm going to introduce Mamadou Saliou Diallo. He's the president of the Guinean community in New York. It's called GIUCA. So welcome on the podcast for today for the special session. What do you, what should people look forward to this year's African Development Summit?
Good afternoon, Jay and Baleke. I greet you all and everybody that is watching us around the world. And it's a pleasure for me to be here and to co-host this event that we're about to have in September. And definitely people should look for a bridge between the diaspora and the motherland. Those of us that have had the privilege to travel around the world or to live abroad throughout these years, we have seen how most of these developed countries, how they thrived for development and what they did to get where they are. And I believe if we follow some of those footsteps, with the experience that most of us already have in the West and looking at the potentials that we do possess in Africa, and we get to get that bridge to stick, the development in Africa will be just a matter of time. And we want people to see this and believe in it and have the idea to be part of that process. Because one thing is for sure, ain't nobody gonna develop Africa except us. We just have to have that in our mind. That's our objective. That's our priority. We should have that as a target to develop Africa, because we already have all the ingredients. It's like you cooking. You bring everything together to make like a nice soup. We already have all that. What we're missing is the human resources to take those ingredients and make them into something very tasty. So throughout this event that we are about to host in September, we would like to point out those opportunities that's already there and what can be done to get access to that, and how can we deal with that once we already have all the tools necessary to transform that into development. I believe that we are capable of doing so. I always like to pick examples on Singapore. How we all know in the mid 60s, like in 1965, when the British decided to leave, left that country with nothing, almost nothing. They had to rebuild everything from scratch, from none to where they are today. Today, Singapore is one of the developed countries around the world, and especially in South Asia. How did they do it? What gave them the energy and the determination to do it? I think if we get inspired by leaders like how those people did, we can definitely transform Africa. I have no doubt about it. And I want people to see that, and I want people also to believe in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful words. I mean, and that's the goal of Africa Coalition for Development. And that's the reason why we won the African Development Summit. It does not belong to African Coalition for Development. It belongs to all of us. So if you're an African, you are qualified, well qualified to be the mouthpiece of the Development Summit. So it is for Africa, it is for my Africa, it is all our Africa. So Africa does not belong to one person. And just like he also said, he talked about Singapore, the power of Singapore. When the country was left in ruins and the people had to stand up and get their country back. And we had, a leader who was able to help them see the vision, but there was a vision on the ground. So the truth is, the goal of the summit itself is to give us opportunities, and not just only one opportunity, multiple opportunity to see different ways we can build Africa. Different ideas. Somebody from Guinea, somebody from Congo, somebody from Nigeria, somebody from Togo. We have the same idea. I mean, that's one of the things that even the colonial masters don't want it to happen. Because when it happens, then there's a problem. I mean, because once the body becomes unified, then there's a problem. So, and that is what, they don't want to happen. But now when we start sitting down, just the way Nkrumah and the likes sat down and said, okay, now it's time for us to start taking our independence. So this is another opportunity for us. Now it's time for development. I mean, the independence period is over. Now it's time for us to start making implementation. Stop talking, stop having jamborees, but now it's time for implementation. I mean, we have quite a number of projects on our platform that we're already putting in, that we're taking one step at a time. If you go to their website, go to project, you're going to see the project that we are working with local organizations to be able to implement this project. I mean, some of these projects are not even in Nigeria, some are in Gambia, some are in other countries. I mean, it doesn't even benefit we as a person directly, but it benefits Africa, and that's the goal. The goal is how can we actually get this thing done? And those are the things we're going to talk about on the summit. So for now, for the wanting of time, I want you to go to our website, africandev.org. I mean, you should be able to have it. I mean, there's going to be an advert that's going to play during this conversation, or maybe after this conversation. You can watch the video and go to the africandev.org/AD Summit 2026. Guys, 2026. So just go and register. I need, it's very, very important to join this conversation for the greatest of Africa. I want to say thank you to everyone joining and listening to this show. And do you have last words, Gideon, before we round off?
Yeah. So I would just like to say that we look forward to have as many people participating, even in our online session, because we are actually filling our spot. We've had a lot of people registering through the link, but we still have many spots online. Be part of the conversation online, follow, engage. You can definitely volunteer, consult our website, make sure you participate. We are open. We are a coalition of organizations. You might have your own organization, by join the ACD so that we can all be able to address the formation challenges and be able to be the catalyst and the architecture of the Africa we want. It shouldn't just be a narrative. It has to be something that is engraved into our practices in our daily lives.
It's a coalition of organizations. So, I mean, no matter the organization you are, I mean, if you're doing something towards the development of Africa, you can reach out to us and we can always partner. So I'm also going to let President Mamadou Saliou Diallo to speak. So what would you say is your final words?
Don't wait for others to do the work and then come try to, get something out of it. Be the person that will be the foundation of that development. You see, there is a saying that says, no matter how big, beautiful is a house, people barely talk about the foundation. They talk about the ceiling, the cement, and all, but they're forgetting one important piece: the foundation where the building is being seated. Looking forward having you all here in New York in the month of September.
All right. Thank you so much. Today I'm your host. So the next conversation, we're going to have Gideon become the host. I think I'm led today to just be the host for the Pan-African half hour today. I look forward to having you on the show. So I will say thank you so much, guys. And thank you for, being on the show with me today. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Bye. Yeah.
All right, man.